Hello, my quilting friends. I'm Leah Day, a professional quilter, author, and online teacher. And this podcast is all about quilting, running a creative business, and balancing our busy hands with our busy lives. You can find the episode show notes and links to everything mentioned in this podcast at leahday.com. Enjoy the show. Hello, my quilting friends. Leah Day here with episode 13 of the podcast. And today I'm going to be speaking with Carrie Barraco, and she is a hobby quilter and a textile artist. So we're just going to be talking about, her love of the craft and kind of how that has evolved for her over the years. She once was a yarn dyer professionally, and that's kind of shifted. Now she's a student. It's really interesting to talk to people that don't necessarily have quilting businesses, but love the craft and have a unique perspective on creating new quilts. So be looking forward to this interview with Carrie. This week has been a very busy, very big week because, of course, the machine quilting block party is in its second block. It is now February, so we've just shared our pattern for our second block, and it is called a Pointy 8 Dresden Plate, and I'm super, super thrilled with this design. You know, it's really interesting. The more block parties and kind of quilt-alongs that I share, the more perspective I have on it. And I think if I could go back and do it all over again, I would have started with this as block number 1. So the Dresden plate would have been block number 1, and then the piecing block, our blooming 9 patch from last month, would have been block number 2. And, that's just kind of a, hindsight, foresight kind of thing. But I think that the Dresden plates are going to end up being more popular. I can see that already just based off of sales, but also just based off of everyone's excitement level. Everyone's excited about learning how to make Dresden plates, and it's a new challenge, and there's applique involved, and that's exciting. And we're excited. It's kind of like, the 2 feet off of one another. So when I see people excited about the next block, then that makes me excited about the next block, and it kind of feeds into itself. So you can find that new block pattern at leahday.com/block party. You can join in the fun anytime. This is a year-long quilt-along, so you can join anytime that you like. And I will be sharing the video on how to piece that block on Monday. Now, of course, creating a Dresden plate's very different from just basic piecing, so I have shared a new series of tip videos, our quilting basics videos. So you can find a video on how to make a homemade template, so that way you can cut out the Dresden plate petals. You can find that video, and you can also find a video on applique circles, on creating a perfect turned edge circle applique. And then we have a new video on the basics of ruler foot quilting as well. This is the first block. I am jumping into ruler foot quilting and sharing, just kind of the bare bones basics of what I've picked up just in the last little while, in the last couple of months as I've been playing with this. What to look for in a ruler foot, how to use it, how the templates work, just the bare bones basics. And then I'm using a foot that is, kind of not designed by the manufacturer. I'm using an older Bernina 1230 in the videos. And there is not a ruler foot made by Bernina for those older machines. I wish there was. I really think that Bernina needs to honor their older machines because there's so many people that love those older machines. They're such great machines and they're so well built. I mean, I can still find 830s, pretty much all of those machines range from, I think, 830, 930, 1030, 1130, like all of those numbers up to 1630 in that series. And you can still find them on eBay for thousands of dollars. So they're still being sold and they're still very valuable to quilters. And I wish that Bernina would come out with a ruler foot compatible with them. So instead, I am using a low shank adapter. That is a low shank adapter that came from my Bernina dealer. And that attaches to the machine and allows me to use any low shank foot. So then I'm using a low shank ruler foot on the machine, and that's how I'm able to do it. And I did find that my needle ended up in center position, which is exactly what you want. You want it centered up in the middle of the ruler foot, and it works great. It's totally stable, very easy. Same style foot as Bernina's, very easy to change feet, and I love it. I think ruler foot quilting is such an awesome, awesome form of free motion quilting. And you can do everything that you do with free motion quilting. So you could stitch designs like stippling, McTavishing, all of those cool designs. But you can then also buddy up a ruler against the foot and stitch straight lines, curves, arcs, circles, all of those kinds of shapes perfectly with the aid of a ruler. And speaking of rulers, we've come out with our own set of rulers. It's the Dresden Plate template set. You can also use them to cut the Dresden plates that we're going to be having all year in the machine quilting block party. But then you can also use them for ruler work quilting. So I designed these with multiple purposes in mind. I have to be honest, I'm a little sick of single taskers, of things that only do one thing and that's all they do. And they take up so much space in our quilting studio. I have a lot of quilting templates and a lot of quilting rulers, and most of them just do one thing. They don't, they are only a quilting ruler and they look really weird and you absolutely couldn't cut with that. And that annoyed me. So I designed something that could do more than that. So that was my goal, and it's working out really well, and I'm super pleased with them. It is a 10-piece set of rulers. You can cut Dresdens with templates 1 through 6. You can cut circles with templates 7 through 10, and then you can cut tumbler shapes, like kind of a wedge shape, with templates 1, 3, and 5. And I think that's it. That's a lot of different things that you can do. And I have set Dad the task of trying to figure out how many Dresdens we could cut with these. So he has been downstairs and having so much fun. I'm so jealous. I've been too busy, but he has been spending day after day all week cutting and piecing Dresden plates. And there's multiple finishes that you can do on the edges. So you could do a straight edge, a curved fused edge, a pointy edge. I mean, the list goes on. And you can then combine those shapes together to make even more interesting Dresden plates. So he's been playing with that. And I keep going downstairs and looking at the blocks like, oh my gosh, that one's so cool. I want to play with these. I can't wait to design some actual quilts, some whole quilt tops using these different shapes and bringing them together and stuff. And that's just really exciting. I think that there's definitely over 100 combinations here, probably more than that. Because I got a comment on YouTube just the other day, and this person said, you could finish the opposite edge too, like the inside edge of the Dresden plate. And so you could make a double point, or you could make a one side pointy and one side curved, and that was like, oh my gosh, you just you just opened up another 20 Dresden plates for me. I have to go try this now too. So that's super exciting and such a thrill. Honestly, I love being creative in a kind of an exponential kind of way. I think this is just something weird about me, that I like to dig into something and not just make 1 or 5, but I like to make hundreds. I really like to see, okay, so we made one of those, how do we change it and make something different? And I think that's just a unique thing of my brain and how I work. I mean, it's how I created the Free Motion Quilting Project and all of the designs. I like looking at things and then tweaking them and making more. And with the Dresden plates, I can absolutely see that. And I'm going to get more time. I'm opening up some more time in my schedule this week so I can get down there and start playing around too and coming up with new quilts. And it's one of those things that I think, it's kind of, I've built it and now I really want to go and play with it and enjoy it and dig into it even more. And I see that there's a lot of possibility here, and I'm already starting to think about, okay, so this works super well for Dresden plates. So what else could it work for? And I'm thinking a double wedding ring. Double wedding ring templates are a dime a dozen, but none of them are, multi-use. You can't also use them for ruler foot quilting. And then I'm looking at them in a new way, trying to figure out, okay, how can I design a double wedding ring where it's easier to put together, less, kind of less nitpicky. It's always driven me crazy. The double wedding ring, just to let you know the history of it with me, I wanted to make one so desperately bad for my wedding in 2005, and it was the first quilt project I ever tried to do. And of course, it's a nightmare. It's an extremely difficult pattern, curved edge piecing, whole 9 yards. And so I've always then had kind of, just a little feeling in the back of my head like, this could be simpler. This could be easier. And so I've designed 2 different sizes, a 15-inch ring and a 10-inch ring. And I've got them, I'm sitting here looking at them like taped to my wall. So I'm going to look at them every day for the next couple of months until I try and figure out an easier way of making them. And I think I'm going to lean towards applique, turning those edges maybe. I'm not sure, but I think that there's definitely a possibility here for a template that does more than just cut fabric and does more than just quilt and arc shape, but does both and then has lots of variations in between. So that's really what I'm excited about and really kind of geared up about. But I will have to admit, I neared a little bit of burnout this past month. We had 3 launches, the block party, the Sashings and Cornerstones pattern, and the Dresden Plate template set all in the same month. And then I was also blogging almost daily with tip videos, and it was just so much. And I did not give myself enough time in between things to kind of relax and calm down and just be able to play and do my own thing. And that's a problem. That's when I know that I need to back off a little bit and work out my schedule and time so that I have just more time to be still and just do something simple like draw, and be creative that way. So I'm going to back off a little bit this month. I'm going to take a little bit more time, and that means that the podcast is going to slow down. I'm only going to post 2 podcasts this month in February. And, part of it also is we're traveling. We're going to go to QuiltCon and a comic book convention, so I know that we're going to be busy too. And right now, that seems to make the most sense to me. I'm still struggling to get this podcast where I can batch it out, and feel like I'm efficient with it, and that's just not happening still. With videos, I can go shoot 4 or 5 videos in a day. That's how I can make so many, and it's batching. It's a batching process where you just, kind of have everything prepped up, have all your fabric cut, and then you go and have a shooting day. I'm not able to do that with the podcast, and that's a struggle, and that makes it more difficult, and that's why we're slowing it down. I'm not sure if it's going to remain slowed down and just go to a bi-weekly show where it's, 1 week we have a show and the next week we don't. I'm not sure. I'm just going to have to play around with this and see. Right now, I'd say the podcast is all effort and absolutely no return. It is a labor of love. And Josh has suggested dropping it down multiple times. And I've been like, no, I love it. I love doing the podcast. He's like, but Leah, realistically speaking, this is killing your time. And it's not, it's not turning, it's actually costing you money, and not bringing in anything. So I try not to look at things merely from a perspective of money or income. I try and look at it also as, what I'm wanting to share and what kind of, energizes me and fuels me up and stuff. But I had to admit, this past month, adding the podcast on top of everything else was just too much. It was just too much of a push. So gonna back off a little bit. I'm gonna take a lot more breaks this month. Gonna really chill out and spend a lot of time drawing and planning. I had a goddess image pop in my head, and I really think I need to sit down and draw it. And that is a goddess figure dangling at the end of a rope. I know that sounds bad. Not like she's hanging, like by her neck or anything. Gosh, that's awful. No, more like she's like hanging by her hands on the end of a rope, and just kind of dangling over an abyss, or kind of in a kind of a, I'm thinking kind of a circular, kind of almost a well. And it's a positive image to me. I know it sounds negative, but it's a positive image to me because to me it's right at that point, that cusp where you're at the end of your rope and you're about to let go and like fly off the handle at someone and yell, or just, oh my gosh, I can't take this anymore, that kind of state. But reaching that point, you have to realize and make a change. And I think that's why she popped into my head. I think it's a positive image. When we reach the end of our rope, that's when we know something's gotta, we've got to do something different. So I think it's a good one. I'm not sure about the colors yet, but I'm going to just get it on paper and draw that out. That'll be an exciting thing to work on this month, something relaxing. And also just to focus in on that, where is the end of my rope? And why did I nearly reach it this past month? And what caused that to happen? This is why I make goddess quilts, because they inspire questions like that and force me to dig deeper. And then also help me start to say, okay, I'm nearing the end of my rope. I need to back off. It helps me to be more in tune with that and to check in with it. So that's exciting for this month, and I'm looking forward to taking more breaks and just having a little bit of time and a little space in my schedule. Now, as I slow down the podcast, I am adding in something new, and this feels easy to add and also quite a lot of fun, and that is a new series of videos called Sit Down Quilting Sunday. I have a new quilting machine, a long arm quilting machine from Grace Company. If you listen to the podcast from last week, you'll learn a lot about Grace Company, and it was an excellent interview with Nathan Erznosdek from Grace, and we talked about just that transition from quilting on a home sewing machine to quilting on a long arm and then quilting on a frame. And I'm going to be making this transition this year. I'm just going to add a frame somewhere downstairs. I'm not sure exactly where. I've got to open up some space down there. And don't worry, I'm going to continue to share videos in the Machine Quilting Block Party on my home machines. Please don't freak out. But I know that there's a lot of interest in long arms, and Grace Company has very affordable long arms. And I'm really interested in learning the differences and sharing my perspective on this and kind of the transition from a home machine to a long arm. Because even though I'm setting this up as a set down, so it's going to continue to work just like a home machine, so I'm moving the quilt under the needle, it's still different because it's a long arm. It's a much bigger machine. It is, louder, more power, more speed. There's a lot of different things. It does not have feed dogs. It is not a machine that you can piece with. It is only for quilting. And so that's going to be very different. And I think pretty cool. And so far, the response has been extremely positive. I've gotten lots of questions to work with. I shared the first video this last Sunday, and already got lots and lots of questions from you guys to answer. The first video coming out tomorrow, Sunday, will be, this will be the second video, and it's going to be all about tension and just getting used to your machine and kind of an initial quilting thread test, speed test, kind of getting to know you kind of thing. And this is something I run through with all of my machines whenever I get them. And then I usually, for the first little while, I will run through this usually every day when I'm first setting down to start quilting, because it just gets you back in tune with that machine and kind of running at the same speed and on the right foot. And you can also then check in on tension and make sure that everything's looking good on the front and the back. I can already say, I missed one guide in the threading, and my tension was so badly off. It was shocking that it made that big of a deal, but it really does. And so just little things like that, picking up on those little things, is really what this series is all about. And I'm excited about it. I did receive one negative comment, and of course, like everyone's brain works, the one negative comment can sometimes seem so much bigger than the dozens and dozens of positive comments. And that negative comment was basically along the lines of, oh, how many people could actually afford this? You're stepping outside of your audience, that kind of thing. My response to that is fairly simple, and that is based on the number of people that are interested in this. Clearly there's interest. And then two, I have quilted on machines that are very expensive. When I switched to the Janome 8900, that was the Janome Horizon, that was a $10,000 machine when it came out. So I have not always gone with the cheapest home sewing machine, and you can pick up a Grace machine for $3,000 to $4,000, and you really can find some good deals if you go to shows and stuff. So no, I don't think that this is outside of the bounds of what anyone's interest is in. And then certainly, if a quilter is feeling frustrated with what you're using right now, if you're feeling frustrated and you're already considering a new machine, then this is just one of the many options that you have. Bigger home sewing machines, especially ones with embroidery capability, are very expensive. And if you're looking at that, or looking at, one of these 11 to 10, 11 to 12 inch, Horizon machines, or any of the kind of bigger quilting machines that are home machines, the Grace is, comparable to that, but it's a long arm. It's actually going to a long arm. And the cool thing is you can get an upgrade kit if you decide, oh, okay, I'm curious about a frame, I'd like to know what that's like. You could get an upgrade kit for this machine and then move it to a frame. So there's lots of options here, and I think lots of opportunity for growth. And of course, I'll continue to be sharing videos on home machines too, but I'm really intrigued by this. And I've been renting time on a long arm in a local quilt shop, and just that difference in movement has been really fascinating. And then too, I have found it to be very easy to baste my quilts. And I've started basting a lot of my quilts on a long arm with water-soluble thread. So just rolling the quilt up onto the frame and then running across it with straight lines, vertical and horizontal, with water-soluble thread. And that is 1,000,001 times easier than basting traditionally, on a tabletop. It's faster, it's easier, and it's so much more efficient. And that's really where my interest came from. I started renting time, I started playing around with it, and I got more curious about it as I played with it more. And I decided, I do want to find the space in the house somewhere to set up a small frame. It might not be set up full size. I'll be completely honest. We are nearly out of space here. And so it might be set up at half size, and I might only be able to work on really tiny quilts, and that's okay. But I'm curious enough about it that I'd like to be able to play with it every day, and not have to be driving to Gastonia. The quilt shop is so much fun in Gastonia, and that's 30 minutes away. So I'd like to be able to do this and just walk downstairs and work on it, rather than having to drive across North Carolina to do it. So that's exciting, and I'm really intrigued by the number of questions that I've received and the amount of interest that has been generated from this new series. And a lot of people really curious about my older machine. I had a Juki 2200, and that was my first table-mounted long arm, and why I've switched, because really, if you compare, the Qnique has a lot less features. It is a smaller machine, to be sure. And why did I move, from something that had lots of features and was a bigger machine to something smaller and simpler? And the reason is, I like it better. The Qnique is very stripped down. It's very simple. That also makes it a lot cheaper. And what I've found so far is that the features that it has, they consistently work. And that tells me, good build quality. And I'll be honest, I did not experience that with my other machine. I dealt with a lot of finicky, glitchy issues, and it just, it kind of kept compounding over time and got more and more annoying. And then, from the very beginning, I was uncomfortable shooting videos on it because I couldn't honestly say I recommended the machine. And it seems like no matter what I'm filming on, quilters see those videos and then say, oh, okay, Leah's quilting on it, so therefore it's good. And that's not always true. There's been several times that I've quilted on machines and done videos, and I haven't really liked the machine, and I haven't really been psyched up about it. And I wasn't comfortable with that. It's not always a direct association. Just sometimes somebody pops across the video and sees that. It's like, oh, well, that's obviously possible, and oh, those stitches look good. It's an easy thing to do. I mean, I've fallen into that trap myself, and I've made decisions on machines based on a video I've seen or a demonstration that I've seen. So I just wanted to be careful about that, and that's why for the last pretty much year or so, I have been looking for a new table-mounted long arm, a new long arm to move to. And when I started playing around with the Grace machines at Fall Market, I really liked it because it was so much simpler. and it only had the features necessary to, just get started quilting. It does not have a stitch regulator. That's like the number one question. It does not have a stitch regulator on the set down model. So you're going to have to learn how to balance that speed and movement just like you do on a home sewing machine. And it doesn't have a monitor. It doesn't have anything that glitches out or doesn't work. And then to needle down, you just tap the heel of your foot on the foot pedal, and then it'll send the needle in the down position. And that's it. That's pretty much it. No thread cutters. There's not even a presser foot lifter bar, which keeps freaking me out. I keep trying to lift my foot, and you can't because there isn't that bar. You just have to lift your needle to the top position. And so that keeps I keep searching around the machine, to feel around to find that bar that I'm used to from my home sewing machines, and it's not there. So funny little things like that make up the difference between home machines and long arms. And I'm just really looking forward to exploring this and digging into it. And then eventually, sometime this year, I'm thinking maybe in the summer to the fall, setting up a frame and shifting to a frame with this just to see what that's like and experience that as well. So that's pretty much it. Oh, yep, there's one more thing, and that is Quilty Box. Super sorry that this was late this past month. I had it all ready to go and then pushed it back a week because of the collaboration with Stephanie Sebbing. And basically, I get a box of fun gear from Quilty Box every month, and you can get it too. It's a subscription that just like a magazine, you get it every single month, but instead of just a magazine, it is a box of gear, and you usually have thread, fabric, some sort of notions, and then some sort of pattern. And I like to take the materials and do something totally new with it. A few times I've had quilters ask, why don't you do the pattern that comes in the box? And the reason is I need the challenge and the push to design something new. It pushes me to work simply and quickly. And sometimes I get the Quilty Box, I will usually get the Quilty Box just a little bit early. And let's say I might get it on a Wednesday, and I will take the contents of the box, shoot the videos, design a quilt pattern, write the pattern, and have it all ready to go up on Monday. So Wednesday to Monday, 3 or 4 days. And that is a real push for me. Sometimes it's better than others. Sometimes I'm prepared and have a plan for what I'm going to do. And sometimes it's just by the seat of my pants and I don't know what I'm doing and I'm just guessing as I go. But I like that because in the past, I have gotten so obsessed with perfection and so obsessed with it being just right and just exactly perfect that I've sat on patterns for years. I have a whole box of different patterns that I've written and probably files and files and files on my Dropbox account where I've written something and it's planned and it's nearly there, but I don't know. I've reached some point with it and gone, oh no, it's not perfect. And I've just kind of canned it and not let it reach the light of day. And that's so unfortunate because it's such a waste of time and it's such a freaking waste of money, that time is money, and, wasting my time on something that I'm not going to release is pointless. So that's where this comes from. That's why I do it. It's a good push. It's helping me work simpler, which is my goal this year. And then it also results in more quilt patterns, which is always a good thing. And I do plan to take some of these and turn them into books. And to actually take those free patterns that are being put up for free and then maybe teaching the quilting or some other extra technique and putting them in books so that they then add even more value to my business. And I think that's a good move, and it certainly, I think, is making me a better, stronger designer. And that's something that I like. So this month, the box came in, and it was curated. It was put together by my friend Stephanie Palmer. And she is Late Night Quilter. If you want to look her up on Instagram, she's also the creator of the Quilting Planner, Quilter's Planner. And that is such an awesome planner. I've got it sitting right in front of me, actually, because I am planning out every single day of my life on the Quilting Planner now, and I can't live without it. It's such an awesome planner. It's so well designed, keeping your quilts organized, your projects organized. It has little graph paper on every page, so super, super helpful. And so she picked out and sent the Planner Mini version. It's the smaller version, and that helps definitely organize your life, your shopping, all that kind of good stuff. So that came in the box, as well as a Kona Solids roll-up. And I took that and some fabric I designed for Spoonflower last month. It's called Home Sweet Home Needlepoint Rainbow. Kind of a long name, but it's basically several different designs, a little house design, a little heart design, a little goddess design, and a little rainbow design that were all designed as like needlepoint. They look like they're in stitches. Real bright, rainbowy kind of colors, real funky. And so I designed that fabric, and then this fabric that came in the Quilty Box just happened to match it perfectly. So I sliced that up and decided to teach fussy cutting. Fussy cutting is a technique where you take your ruler and kind of center it up over the fabric so that you're centering the design into the ruler. And that creates a piece of fabric with that design as center stage. And there's lots of different techniques that you can do with fussy cutting, and I want to explore that more and play with it because I think it has a lot of cool potential for our Dresden plates too. So that would be neat. So I did the fussy cutting tutorial, and then I turned and took them, the fussy cut pieces, and then surrounded them with the Kona strips, and then turned them into, I call it fussy cut frames. They're 12-inch quilt blocks, and I took 7 of them and made them into table napkins because we were needing a new set, and then took the remaining 9 and sewed them together to make a mini quilt. And I think I'm going to get Dad to base that up, and I'm going to start quilting it for those sit-down Sunday posts. I think that'll be kind of a fun thing to do. So you can find that tutorial and the free quilt pattern to download. You can find that at leahday.com/fussy, Fussy. I think that turned out really, really good. It was one of those situations where I couldn't make up my mind. When I get tired, I think I have a harder time making firm decisions and just saying, okay, here's what we're doing. We're doing X, Y, and Z, and that's it. You know, I think I struggle with that a little bit. So I could not make up my mind if I wanted to do all napkins or napkins plus a quilt or a quilt. So I think the video maybe came out just a little bit more garbled than usual because I couldn't make up my mind until the very, very end. But the quilt pattern turned out great, and I'm happy with it. And I now realize that before I actually start slicing into the fabric, I really do need to make a rock solid decision. You know, what is this going to be, Leah? Is this going to be, you know, a napkin or a quilt? So this one ended up being both, and that was fun. We use cloth table napkins every day, and I like having a full set where we have enough to use the whole week because we do laundry once a week, and then that way we don't run out, you know, that there's plenty. And we've been running out because James uses like 3 napkins a day. He's really, I need to work on him with that. So now we have an extra 7. So I think that that'll be able to get us through an entire week. So wow, this was a pretty long intro. Lots to share, lots going on. Really, it's been a very busy month, but that's really what we want for the very first month of the year, right? So the last thing is the sponsor for the show, which is our Dresden Plate template set. You can pick up this 10-piece set of templates that will do everything from cutting maybe 100 different Dresden plates, circles, tumblers. You can also use them for ruler foot quilting. So check out this new set at leahday.com/Dresden Plate. You can save $5 on this template set through the month of February. And now, here's the show. That would be bad. Sorry.
There's the time to have those breaks. Yeah.
Hello, my quilting friends. Today, I'm talking with Carrie Barraco. Welcome to the show, Carrie.
Thanks for having me, Leah.
Excellent. So we're going to just talk about being a creative person and how different crafts have flowed through your creative life. So why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself and what crafts you love to do?
Well, I am a textile artist, and for a long time I called myself a fiber artist, but I needed a better descriptor, a more inclusive descriptor. So I have spent time sewing garments, cosplay, costuming, knitting, weaving, felting, spinning, dyeing, quilting, and I don't know, there's probably more things I have done. I've done a little cross stitch, but not that much. And so this year I am a student, and so I actually have extra time. I'm not working this year. I'm just focusing on doing an additional year of college because 7 wasn't enough, so I'm doing 8, and then I will be going back into my professional career as a therapist. So I'm a licensed mental health counselor and a registered play therapist. So I specialize in developmentally appropriate counseling for children.
Excellent. So out of all of those different crafts, and I'm totally there with you as far as all the different crafts, like one is not enough. But what would you say is your main craft, your favorite craft right now?
Right now it's quilting, and it has been for the past couple of years. So we shall see. I need new socks, so I've been knitting some new socks because all my old ones kind of started to fall apart. But I've been doing a lot of quilting. Right now I'm doing Bonnie Hunter's mystery quilt, and I'm getting my blocks pieced to put together for that one.
Excellent. I've heard several people say that they're working on that right now. It's a very, very popular project. Yes.
Yep, she's fantastic.
Excellent. So what was it about quilting that made you want to dig deeper? You said it was a few years ago that you really got into it. What is it about quilting that keeps you coming back for more?
I love the art of it. I love the fabric. I love the prints. I love the combinations. I love the so that's the piecing. I don't love applique. I'll kind of do it sometimes when it's indicated, and I've done it like in the here and there if it's going to accent, but it's not my love. I also really love that it is a historically female craft. I think that it is, I really love to look at what have our women done. And then it's an American craft. This is something, not exclusively anymore, but there's a lot of talk about it that sort of piecing, the way we know it, is kind of a uniquely American thing. And so there's always more to learn, and there's always more to do, and there's always the next fabulous thing I have to make. So that is what absolutely keeps me coming back.
Awesome. So tell me about your very first quilt. When did that happen, and what was it for? Like, was it for somebody, or was it for you?
Sure. It was for me. I think I was 16, maybe, or I could have been 17. I put it together because I wanted one. I know I brought it to college, so I think I made it for college. So I wanted one that was a little extra long and exactly what I wanted. I made it out of stuff that was in the house. So it's got like baby clothing type of fabric because, you know, my mom had made some garments. I was born in the 70s, so mothers were still making their kids' clothing then. And it's pretty, people look at it and they're like, that's really nice. And it's crazy. It's got, I had clearly seen some squares within squares, and I appliqued them on top. And then I had clearly seen some applique because there were hearts with zigzags around them, and those hearts definitely fell off like right away. And then I took yarn and did X's around all the seams, so I had probably seen a crazy quilt. And it's just really, I'm remembering it now, and it's really not a great quilt, but it did see me through those years, and it got me started, and it was cool. I just made it up out of my head, out of what I had around.
And sometimes that is the absolute best place to start. So do you consider yourself, like knowing all these crafts that you do you consider yourself an artist or a crafts person, or has that kind of evolved over the years?
I think it changes. I would like to say that I have the skill of a craftsperson because I think a craftsperson really pays a lot of attention to making things perfect. And I tend to focus on making things good enough. And they're always going to get better, but these are human hands, and they're not going to be precise. They're going to get better. And I'm going to be doing the best I can with the information I have now, with the materials I have now, with the skills I have now. So that's kind of craftsy. but I have a lot of artistic vision. I haven't put them together into a lot of art quilts. I have some really kind of like spiritually oriented pieces that I would like to make. I think I've been waiting for the technical skill, like to learn the technical skill. I don't want to, nothing wrong with fusing a bunch of things up on a piece of fabric. I'm not criticizing that at all, but that's not exactly what I want to do. I want to know how to get my vision onto the piece. So, yeah, it kind of goes all over the place.
Yeah, I completely understand what you're saying. When I first got started, you have this kind of inspiration comes into your head and it's this really cool thing, but then I don't even know how to make that. Like, how do I even put that together? So, do you feel like that's holding you back right now, that you just don't know which applique technique or which piecing technique? Is that the struggle for you right now?
I have two sort of things that I want to do, and one of them is a total derivative work from an artist that I know. And so I want to talk to him, and I just really need to call him up and say, like, hey, how do you feel about people doing derivative work? Because he is a professional artist, and he is in my extended community, and I want to respect his work as a painter, as an artist, and I don't just want to duplicate it. I'm inspired by some of the same themes he is. So part of me wants to I want to create this in fabrics and in textiles, but I also kind of want to explore the themes that are behind it. And then just recently, I got a big inspiration. One of my friends, teachers, gurus, if you will, had posted a new song that he had finished, or a chant song, something like that. Something very sort of inspiring, and I have a vision for this whole big piece now. So I think I will get to do that, because the vision's in my head, so I don't need to talk to anybody about that. I can just get it going. So I don't really think there's any more skills that I need to do. I sort of need to gather materials. Like, if I'm going to make something with a lot of different fabrics, I need to own many pieces of fabrics, and I think I'm there. I'm definitely stable. Do you know that term?
No.
It comes from the knitting world, and it means stable, all capitals. Stash amassed beyond life expectancy.
Oh, totally there. There needs to be like a double sable where stash amassed beyond double life expectancy. I'm not sure what that acronym would be, but I'm totally there. So, so you got to get the right fabrics. With the painting quilt, you need to ask permission. And the number one thing, whenever I get stuck with something like that, where I want to ask permission, or I just want to like run something by someone, that can sometimes like lock me in place. Do you find that that's just kind of made you a little feel stuck about that?
About those pieces, definitely. Because I could just totally Facebook message this guy and say, hey, we're not like close friends, but we're well acquainted and we cross in the same circles. So I could totally say, is this something okay? I recently figured out, I think that they were talking about it on the Stitch as far as what is derivative work. And I'm like, oh, that's the language I need to talk to him about. Not, can I copy your piece, but can I do a derivative piece? And still kind of, still respect, what he had done. Absolutely. So now I have that language. So I think that's going to be easier for me to approach him.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's sometimes scary, but I get emailed from people a lot, and my answer is always yes. Like if someone wants to take a design or something and go do something with it, unless it is something, I honestly, like there's no unless, like there's no reason why I would ever say no to somebody, you know what I mean? And I think so many people have that exact same mentality. And it's one of those things that, I feel bad when someone has a bad experience asking somebody for permission, because, when somebody asks, that means that they love your work and they're interested, and that's just a sign that you're doing something right. So I think that's all good. So, do you ever, have you ever gone through a time with quilting where you've stepped away from it and done something else? You have all these other crafts. Has there ever been a time when quilting has not been like your number one?
Yeah. It really was my number one from, I guess, 1997 to 2004. So that is when I was out of college and not a mother yet. So when my son was born, he was a really needy baby who wanted to be strapped to me and touching me at all times, or he was screaming. So I wore him a lot. I slung him to my front, and I wore him around the house, and I strapped him to my back, and I didn't feel safe. I couldn't do free motion quilting with a baby strapped to my front. I'm here on my, and I have a little bit better machine now, but I had a pretty decent machine, but there's that needle going, and I had this little baby next to me. So it wasn't really safe for him, it wasn't really safe for me. And then he wouldn't sleep when I wasn't touching him, and knitting was really portable. So I could go lay in bed, and he would sleep, and I could knit, and I started with making him, like, diaper covers, and I kind of just went running for years, full force into the yarn world. Actually, that's when I first went into webs. The world's biggest yarn store is near where I live. So I went in there first with some friends, and I wanted embellishment yarn, and that was my first experience with that, with yarn, was looking for a little bit of embellishment, and walking into that place was a little bit bigger than some embellishment yarn.
Most definitely, most definitely. And so that was just, it sounded like that was the perfect craft for that period of your life. Tell me about how that evolved. Like, you ended up dyeing fabric professionally for a little while, right?
Yeah, well, I dyed yarn and fiber.
Sorry,
So
yeah.
people use fiber for felting or spinning. And yeah, I joke that I had to start dealing to support my habit, because hand-dyed sock yarn is pricey. I think it's about $30 a hank now to make a pair. You could probably get a pair and a half. It was more in the 20 range when I was doing it. And so I was like, well, and the other part of that was that I really wanted the Harry Potter self-striping sock yarn. There's a woman who is dyeing yarn that would make stripes that looked like the scarves in the Harry Potter movies. And that was so popular you couldn't get it. So I'm like, I want it. And I said, I'm just going to do it myself. So I bought a giant cone of yarn, and I bought the dyes. So I bought some, I'm a Gryffindor, so I bought some maroon or burgundy and some gold. And I figured out, I can look this up. I can do this. And I did. And then I dyed up some more. I did the rest of the cone, and I sold it on Etsy, back when Etsy was small. And that sold. And then it kind of steamrolled into, I did it as a full-fledged part-time job for 5 years. So that went for quite a while.
Tell me a little bit about that, taking something that you love that was just a craft and then turning it into a business. How did that change the feel of the craft for you?
I think they evolved together. So for me, I don't think I could speak to them being very separate. For me, it was great because I could make all these things a tax deduction. And I'm a big advocate of, like, just because it's a legitimate business decision doesn't mean it has to be a good one. So I could deduct my trip to Rhinebeck, the biggest, it's one of the two biggest sheep and wool festivals in the country. And it's maybe 2 hours from where I used to live in New York. So I could deduct it. My friends didn't need to deduct the hotel room, so I could deduct it. So it also kind of gave me a place. I'm kind of naturally go back and forth between very shy and very kind of exuberant. So I used to set up like a trunk show in the hotel, and we'd all knit around the pool. And so I'd bring my box of stuff. I was never big enough to actually get a booth and spend $1,000 to rent the booth and have, 20,000 hanks of yarn for sale. But I would go down to the hotel, and then people would fawn over it. And so that sort of became a big part of my yarn life. They were really entwined.
So tell me a little bit more about how that transitioned. So you had the yarn business and you were doing those things and traveling obviously a little bit. And then how did that switch over into quilting? How did that change?
Well, I closed my yarn business. I was doing the yarn part-time and doing therapy part-time and mothering, full-time. So, and then about 5 years ago, my husband died unexpectedly. And so he was the full-time wage earner and the insurance provider. So at that point, things were sort of fine financially, the way we had things set up and the way our system is set up with Social Security and all that stuff. But I just didn't want to give, sort of split my attention that way. It was easier for me to I'll just go to work full time, I'll get insurance, and we'll do this. And I kind of wrapped up my professional obligations. So that was when I kind of pulled back, and I kept knitting. I kind of slowly stepped back from professionally dyeing. Like, I kind of slowly sold off my equipment and said, okay, I don't have room for this. I moved back close to where my parents are, and into this little apartment from this enormous house. So I had to make a decision that I don't need this. Also, this is replaceable. If I sell this piece of equipment, I can get it again later if I want to. And then that's when I started quilting again a lot. And it kind of was the same way when I started knitting. It's like I picked up the cottons and started running with it. And a few years ago, I must have made 6 throws for people's weddings. I started to get into, like, the pre-cuts are really fun. And I started watching your videos, and there was so much on YouTube. I learned a lot from you, and your sort of instruction on YouTube, that I started doing lots of that, and I still am. So it really hasn't stopped. I always have a piece in the works, or 6 pieces in the works, and there's so much more. I just recently got a grace frame in the basement, and I got a machine to go on there. It's not a long arm, but it works the same way, and so that's kind of a fun new thing that I'm exploring, because I'm churning out these throw quilts, and they're easy ones, like jelly roll races and pinwheel ones out of layer cakes. But my cousins were getting married, and my friends were getting married, so I can give them something that's really special and handmade. It didn't really take me all that long, more than somebody who doesn't know how to do it. But it's relatively easy to do a jelly roll race, and then to throw it on and do a free motion all over pattern.
Absolutely. Yeah, that sounds really good. And tell me about the piece you're most proud of at this point. Probably made lots and lots of quilts, but is there one quilt that really stands out as being really special above all the others?
I think so. I think that is probably my Dresden Bloom. That's an Adita sitar pattern. And I think that it is most special because it's the first quilt that I ever made where I'm like, I am completely happy with this. It is also filled with my scraps. It's filled with scraps from, like, the bin at the store, like, fill a Ziploc bag, or fill a bag for $5. So I got all this, like, diversity from there. And then my grandmother's scrap quilts. I was starting to work on it when my grandmother moved out of her home and into the nursing home, and she used to sew for all of my mother's generation, and as women did then, and she loved to sew, and so all of these kind of neutral little scraps, and so I took all of those, and they're in there as well. It's pretty detailed and fiddly. I don't know if you're familiar with the pattern, but it's like 3-dimensional, and you have to do all of these things, and it's beautiful. It's got all these batiks and all these prints, and then I densely quilted it, and all these different filler patterns in each section. So, and they all, they're not all fantastically perfect and amazing, but I'm like, every one of these is pretty good. So, that's probably my favorite one. It's big enough for my bed, too. The whole thing.
Excellent. And have you ever, because you're a therapist, have you ever integrated quilting into your therapy? Have you ever brought that, kind of merged the two of those together?
I have. I sometimes bring in different kinds of textile arts. I have a series that I did that I called Resiliency quilts, and I used to work in a therapeutic school. And the summertime it would still run because these are kids who need a lot of year-round treatment. The summertime would just be devastating. They would go back to square one. But it's summer, so we're chilling out, and we're a little bit less intensive as far as what they need. And so I kind of looked at the research about resiliency and that's a concept about, like, what makes 2 kids, let's say there's 2 kids from the same household, the same neighborhood, the same school. How come one is, a gangbanger and one is a middle school teacher? Why does that happen? And so the study of resiliency is sort of why that. How come some people make it and some people don't? So they kind of found out 4 main areas where that can be, you can have strengths and weaknesses. And also that if you have a weak area, let's say your family is just tank, like you have no support, not enough love more than anything. But you have a fabulous school, and you're that custodian always has your back, and the principal takes time to know you and everything like that. That can make up for the area where you're weak. That can actually make up for the fact that your home life, in this example, is subpar. So I would, through group therapy, kind of help the kids identify where are you strong and where are you weak. And then we would use fabric markers and fabric crayons and do a blank neutral square. And then I took it out and sort of framed them and put them together, basic sort of 4 squares. And they had, at the end of it all, they had a lap quilt. It was all about what made them special, unique, and resilient. And so they were able to keep that with them for, ever.
Excellent. That sounds like such an amazing project. And what are the four different things for resiliency?
It was home, your family and home, your community and your neighborhood, who you are as an individual, your personal makeup, and your school. That's for children. So any one of those 4 areas, you're going to have strong points and weak points. And it was so fascinating to me that you can actually make up for weaknesses in one area by building on the strengths in another area.
That totally makes sense. It really, really does. And I love that you are giving this resource to children that, I know I hand my son, a pencil and a piece of paper, but, I hardly ever put a prompt like that on it. And that would be such a powerful thing to do, and so helpful for him as well. So when it comes to kind of integrating that, have you ever integrated quilting into some, like therapy for yourself? Have you ever done anything like that?
I don't think I have, now that you mention it. I wonder if some of that might happen if I go into more of those art quilts we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. So, in all the time that you've been making quilts, have you ever felt burned out? Like just kind of tired of it? Has that ever happened to you?
I think that's when I kind of switch tracks. Like, that's, if I don't want to do this, I probably want to do something else. I've never not felt a creative urge. I think that's part of who we are as creative people. And I guess I would argue that all of us are creative in some way. It's sometimes it's in the kitchen, and sometimes it's in construction work, and sometimes it's in textiles. So I always have that impulse, and I think it's really important to follow that impulse, because that's who we are as human beings. We're constantly thinking and growing and evolving, and that's what makes us kind of different from other species. Like, we're the ones who are like boldly going, if you will.
Yeah, I should add that you're wearing a Star Trek shirt.
I am wearing a Star Trek t-shirt.
Perfect. Excellent. So, do you think quilting, like, if you could rank all the hobbies, do you think quilting is the best? And, why would that be?
Of course it's the best. Now, I'm not sure. I go through different opinions. I used to think that, I'm like, knitting is the best because you make these things that are useful and incredibly beautiful at the same time. And that, I could say the same thing about quilting. And I guess those are my 2 favorites, really. I've never considered myself a visual artist, so like a painter or a drawer or an illustrator or a sculptor. I guess I've sculpted a couple of things that have somehow come out of me, but I think that it's the best. You can find community in quilting as well, and a lot of times creative efforts are solitary. So we get this unique thing, and it's true in both of those worlds, both the yarn and fiber world and in the quilting world, that you can step out of your studio and into a group setting and interact with people who are doing similar things, and a lot of the times have been similar if they're not in a similar phase of life, they've been in a similar phase of life. We have a lot in common.
Absolutely. So what are you looking forward to the most? Like, this is always the question I ask at the very end of the podcast. And I'm just curious what you're looking forward to in your quilting hobby and this wonderful craft in the next 5 years. What are you planning on making and excited about doing?
Whew. I guess I would have to say I'm excited about those art pieces. I wouldn't have thought of it, but I think that there's a lot that I'd like to show, and that's kind of a piece that I can bring out of I can grow it here in this quilting and textile world, and then bring it out into other creative places. I'm a member of a big sort of spiritual community, and every year we have gatherings, and the past several years, maybe even 10, there's been an art gallery, an art salon, and so people bring and put their work up, photography, painting, sculpture, all sorts of things, and people put their work up and talk about sort of why you created this. You get to see different people's styles, different people's techniques, and I'd like to kind of come out and represent that what we are doing is valuable, and what we are doing can communicate across just kind of across to different kinds of people who might never be interested or have never heard of what we're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. That sounds wonderful. So, is there anything else that you want to add? I really, really enjoyed talking with you today.
It's been great talking with you too. I think that's all. I'm so glad you're doing this podcast.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining me, Carrie. I wish you the best of luck, and I cannot wait to see more of your quilts. So that's it for this episode. You can find notes and links, the different things mentioned in the intro of this podcast at freemotionproject.com. Until next time, let's go quilt.